Hello, and thank you for choosing this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel to support me. I would really appreciate that. And now, on to the talk. All right, so let's move on to the third of our categories, which was innovations. So I think without having to really kind of dilly-dally with that, it's the AI in general, artificial intelligence in general, and Gen AI, generative AI, probably the most innovative thing that we've seen this year, and certainly the kind of the follow-up explosion of those types of platforms, for 2023.
It sort of tended to sort of put everything else into the shade, didn't it? And therefore, I think you asked the question, is it going to explode from there, or is it going to implode? And I think, as ever, it will
more projections for next year.
It'll be somewhere between the two, but we'll come back to that. But I mean, it's clearly been something that's shaken people. I think that's probably the way I put it. Everybody's been shaken to the point where everybody's trying to react very, very quickly, sometimes with devastatingly bad effects. You worry about the Amazon queue or Bard's problems of trying to keep up with OpenAI. And I think people just rushing to get on the bandwagon without really what's going on. And Gen AI becoming the sort of conflated with general machine learning and AI in itself. And I think when you look, what's going on, AI and machine learning are developing at the normal sort of pace. Gen AI has come in from sort of left field almost. But actually, is there much activity going on in production of Gen AI? There's a lot of production activity for AI and ML generally, but Gen AI is there's some way to go. So I think it's one of those ones that burst onto the scene, very, very innovative. I mean, it's clever, and we've all played with it. I mean, it's interesting to watch and see how it does it, and the ability of it to merge the deep fakes. I don't know whether you saw the Putin one.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Fascinating. It caught him out. It was lovely. It was caught him out, and he had to stop and think. But it just shows what can be done with this technology. But I think it's it's in that how the hell are we going to use it type phase.
Was that by the FSB or something?
No, I think it was genuinely somebody who wanted to give Putin a hard time. And just caught him out. How the hell they snuck that in? I mean, you could say, yeah, it must have been the FSB, because how the hell could they insert that into the stream without somebody picking up on it in an environment like Russia today? But I almost hope it was some sort of dissident sitting in his in his flat somewhere, going, I'm gonna show him what it's like. So
yeah. I've seen plenty of ones on TikTok, so there's quite a lot of other ones on TikTok as well. So there's a ton of them. So I mean, I think we may cover more of this around this sort of the whole AI sort of space and the Gen AI space in a special episode that we're considering of doing. So something that you guys might want to have a watch as well in the future on the channel. So we're looking at having a AI state of play. So that might be like a quarterly thing that we'll do, depending on our time, really. We'll maybe just do one episode to see how we get on with that, and I'll just cover what's happened in the last sort of 18 months or so, and then take it from there.
But if we know what we're talking about, we could.
If we know what we're talking about, but the
deep fakes up and just let it run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it won't be us. It'll be just kind of a couple of deep fake Richards and Pauls maybe doing it for us. Just some scripted, some ChatGPT script or something generated for us.
More interesting and more engaging than the.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Yes, it won't be famous. It'll be infamous then at that point. I think. But certainly, I think things like a multimodal large language models or LLMs have played a a big part in kind of, bigging up that sort of and upping that sort of hype as well. There was that sort of early, I think, we're all going to die and AI is going to kill us and stuff like that. Sensationalism, I think, in the press, that was early on this year. But then, it kind of then settled down to a kind of a tech. And now I'm kind of almost just seeing the cusp of, but how are enterprises going to use it?
Yeah.
And we won't go into that because that'll be a spoiler, I think, for the AI state of play episode that we want to do. But we can cover that a lot more, I think, in that. But there seems to be like almost a consensus of kind of how that will be. But certainly, multimodal large language models, LLMs, kind of coming in that can deal with multiple modalities. So things like text and graphics and sound and some specifying or focusing on music and things like that. All of that, I think, is going to be sort of probably multiplied by next year. You're going to have a lot more of those types of models coming out for next year.
I think an area where, if you like, the consumer approach, you're talking about music, you're talking about pictures and videos and those sort of things, will start to inform enterprises how they might use this.
Yeah.
I think enterprises are struggling with thinking, what's the use case at the moment? I think this will be a classic consumerization one that says actually they'll start to see how it plays into their businesses because of what happens out in the consumer space.
Yeah, and we did also cover this, so if anybody's interested in having a watch of kind of further space. We did cover it in a previous class state of play episode as well. Can't speak anymore. I've been talking for an hour, and we did talk about kind of AI and resources for AI and power and things like that as well. That being an issue, you and I think we did discuss that a while back. So again, I'll put a link in the description for that particular episode of Class State of Play. But yeah, AI State of Play, that's kind of what we're maybe going to do as a sort of an experimental quarterly sort of episodic series of episodes that we can do, and we'll see how that goes. And yeah, no, we don't know. We'll kind of probably speculate on the future of that, and we'll certainly do that in the January projections episode as well. But certainly, kind of that whole AI space, I think, has been definitely the innovation for this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now on to the fourth one, which is the cloud winners and losers. So you wanted to mention NVIDIA as a winner in this space.
Yeah. So, again, we've talked about NVIDIA, and we've talked about the challenge to Intel and AMD and others through what's happening. But, if you're looking at the winners of the year, partly because of cloud, partly because of AI, it's both. NVIDIA has come from not nowhere, but it again, if you'd gone back to the early days of NVIDIA and said to people, graphics cards are going to, actually take over the world, you would have been going, really? Why? Again, it's one of these ones they were in the right place at the right time. I think an awful lot of luck in terms of having the product that suddenly met a need. But my goodness me, it's really gone gangbusters, I think is the term for them.
Yeah.
And making things possible that probably people didn't think was possible. So
yeah.
I just thought that they're probably the biggest winners out of what's happened this year.
Yeah, and I think we covered them in the October episode, I think, of Class State of Play. Now the other one we wanted to touch on was kind of telcos slightly.
Yeah, and it was the other end of the spectrum. I think this has been a sort of slow burn, but you sort of feel that the telcos as a group have really not managed to take advantage of the cloud world as much as they should do. The fact that you're getting the likes of Amazon coming in with technology stacks in for the space, it ought to be a warning sign for them that all is not right. And they've got challenges because they've got this huge estate of, physical infrastructure they have to deal with, but you can look at, they've gone down the OpenStack route early, and that's made life probably more difficult than it should be for them, and again, I always come back to the fact that there are cultural and marketing issues at play here that make it difficult for those companies to get to grips with the way in which the hyperscalers, but the cloud companies in particular, go about doing their business. It's just, you can almost look at telcos as being public sector as opposed to private sector, in the way in which they operate. So I think they're in danger of, they've sort of known instinctively that there's a real existential threat to them because they're going to be just pushed to the bottom of the technology stack on low margin business, and yet they seem incapable of getting out of it. And you go through, people like CenturyLink, becoming Lumen and still being in trouble, and the AT&T and Verizon seeing pretty flat revenues and flat profits and really struggling. And they've got real challenges. So let's not underestimate the challenges they face in moving from where they were, from what was really a hardware environment to a software-defined environment. It has been a challenge for them, but I think they've struggled to make the two things come together.
Yeah, and I think on the telco side, what I think I picked up on, a word that I picked up on, was digitization of the telco services. So we saw over the probably last 5 years, maybe more, things like network function virtualization appearing, which kind of digitized all that very proprietary stuff that you used to do in telco equipment, all being virtualized basically. So you can run it in software as a normal service, and you could run that in a virtual machine. You can run that in a container. At least more recently, it's kind of gone into the container space, which begs the question about sort of using OpenStack. And OpenStack, I think, was a false start. We covered OpenStack in the June episode, I believe, this year, and kind of I think we both exchanged what we felt about OpenStack in that one, so we won't go into that. But the one I wanted to pick up on just very quickly was open source, and that sort of got hit quite hard this year with some license and subscription changes, or license mainly changes, by some vendors in the open source space. So Red Hat kind of changed their enterprise Linux licensing, which has had an impact, or seemingly will have an impact on downstream projects. So that was unfortunate. And also HashiCorp changed their license for Terraform. And I don't know if this is actually pervasive across all of their solutions, but certainly Terraform. And I've also started hearing about Vault as well, which is their secrets management solution, changing their license as well. That's had an almost immediate impact and response from the open source community. So you've had forks, that's FORKS, of lots of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux equivalents, and Terraform has also had some forks as well. So OpenTofu has been one, and OpenTF being the other forks as well, from the Terraform open source project. So, and I think actually there was a Open Bow or something. I can't remember the name. I will try and put the link in the description, which is a fork of Vault as well, Terraform, or rather HashiCorp's Vault as well. That was very recent, actually. I just picked up on that last few days. So I think this has caused a lot of turmoil. Certainly the forks are not going to help. Enterprises now, most importantly, I think enterprises are now kind of started asking the same question that they thought they had answered in the last 10, 15 years, which was, can we rely on open source software? And and can we use it and embed it in our business systems? And I think that's really unfortunate that sort of thing is having to to come back again.
Yeah, it's a natural cycle, I think, in the industry.
Is it?
I think so. I think, this idea that you come up with a new, if you go back to the early Unix days, everybody, then suddenly everybody jumped on different flavors of Unix and made it their own, because there's a desire, I think, from an enterprise level to have something that is, supported and stable. And open source has always been seen as, yeah, it's great, it doesn't cost us anything, but how do we support it? And therefore you see supported versions, and therefore you see, the Red Hats of this world growing, and then obviously IBM takes over and, maybe imposes some of its corporate culture on the environment. But fundamentally, you get back into this, as an enterprise, you want something that you can turn to somebody and say, it's your fault, you fix it. I mean, that's a very negative side. But fundamentally, they're looking for that assurance that it will run. And there's always been within an enterprise world a slight nervousness about open source. They can see the rapid development and new opportunities, but then, of course, of running it on an ongoing basis and getting the people who can support it and maintain that support is actually quite difficult. And that's getting worse rather than better. So
yeah, I mean, I recognize that. I think the point I was trying to make was around, I think it's, at least the way I see it, there's a potential sort of subtle difference there, is that where you can take something and innovate on it, that is the nature of open source. That is what you do. People don't like something that, it could be as simple as the GUI that you're using for something. I don't like that button being there. I'm going to go and do my own version, which moves the button from left to the right side of the GUI or something. It can be, they can be kind of quite pedantic about things like that. But this is kind of a commercial, seems to be like a commercial decision that these very large organizations, which have pledged to be in the open source world, they've, built up huge communities, and then thus those communities have gone on to work in enterprises and brought in that technology into the enterprise, into the business. And now you've just kind of seemingly pulled the carpet from under them all. And I think that is not the same as saying, well, I want to improve on Terraform, so I'm going to do my own version of Terraform. These are reactionary moves against stuff which seems to be going in the opposite direction of the openness that you get in open source, and that sort of the spirit of having open source software. And I think these people have kind of gone through these new licenses that the likes of Red Hat and HashiCorp have put out, and clearly they disagree with the wording and what the implications for these licenses is going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I just think it's a natural evolutionary life cycle going through, and what you're getting now, either the forks or be people breaking away and doing something else, will lead to a new set of capabilities that then become the new Red Hat, if you like, or the new, Terraform, or the new, whatever. Something that we can't even see at the moment will come out of an open source community that provides all sorts of opportunities for enterprises to say, oh yeah, we're going to use that one now, until you get to that point where, you get a level of maturity coming in and people saying, well, I need it supported, and I'm not so bothered in having, huge numbers of new features all the time, but I just need stability. You come back into that and it will splinter off, and you'll get another, it'll go around that cycle. I do genuinely believe the commercial imperative to make money, I'm afraid, will keep on doing this to this type of model over and over again. And then people will say, right, I'm going to declare UDI and I'm going up into the hills, away from the government and actually go and develop my own things again and start off another round. So I think it's a natural evolution. We don't like it, but it's sort of, quite, if you want to get it to real adoption in enterprises, you almost have to go down that route.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'll I'll agree to disagree, I think, on that one, because I don't see it as a very natural sort of approach. But maybe we'll pick up on this, because I think there will be repercussions next year.
It shouldn't be, but we haven't got an ideal world.
Yeah. Okay, right. So let's move on to the last of our categories, which is the tech updates. Now, for me, it was really maybe a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Certainly on the Microsoft side, with Microsoft's announcements at the Ignite conference, and also I think OpenAI did their Dev Day or some Dev Days or something like that event a couple of weeks before that as well. So the innovations for me that I saw, the tech updates that I saw there, were building on what they had released with ChatGPT prior to that. So things like GPT-4 Turbo, GPT-5, I think is going to be coming out next year, and also GPTs, the kind of the agents approach of how you can build your own or train your own model built on top of a foundation model, and then even commercialize that, have like an app store as well. I thought that was a good type of update. You could also maybe call it an innovation, but certainly a tech update building on top of the success of ChatGPT. That was one of those. What did you pick up on as kind of an interesting thing for you?
The interesting one for me, which was, having said that we haven't seen many use cases for large language models yet, was Big Panda, who are AI ops company, who have been working quietly in the background with, I think it's OpenAI based, but I have to go back and just double check on that one. But certainly in terms of large language models, working very closely with a number of customers in using those to look and see how a large language model can improve the predictability of what's happening and reduce mean time to failures, all those sort of awards. And they've been through a number of loops looking at it. Firstly, taking just raw data, the raw data that comes, and feeding it in. And the reality of that was that it didn't do much better than many of the sort of platform, the sort of systems they currently use today. They were seeing the same sort of results. What happened was interesting, was the more enriched the data became, the more context they put into it, the ability to see in a much wider sense of data coming in from different sources rather than the individual silos, and they contextualized it, then run it through the large language models. The results were fairly impressive, to put it mildly, both in terms of the speed with which they got to the what was the core reason why this thing happened, but also starting to get into predictive mode. And so they've been working in sort of beta mode with that, with a number of customers now, and the results we're starting to see, and they're starting to share those results, are impressive. So I think, having said, there's a bit of hype around large language models at the moment, we haven't really seen it in the wild. Hats off to Big Panda for really going down that route. And without sort of prefacing anything that's going to come in 2024, Big Panda are now starting to talk about themselves as being a data company rather than an AI ops company. It's sort of intriguing.
Okay.
And again, I will come back to that in 2024 about 2024 being the year in which we really understand what data means and data quality means and all those sort of issues, because it's these large language models are forcing us to look at that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I think that will be. I want to keep an eye on that for next year. Let's see how that goes. Maybe there might be another search and replace for marketing teams to do, going from AI ops, observability, APM,
data,
and machine data just to data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Data searches. Okay. Right. Okay. So the other one I picked up on was the both AWS at reInvent. And by the way, if you want to have a summary of reInvent, I've done a specific video with John Hammond, who's from AWS. So do check that out. I'll with a link in the description of the video again. So AWS reInvent and Microsoft Ignite both announced, at both of those conferences, they announced AI accelerators. So AWS announced the Trainium 2, Graviton 4, which is, I think, their sort of conventional ARM-based processor, but Trainium2 being an AI accelerator. Excuse me. And I think Microsoft one is called Cobalt, is it, or something like that? Can't remember what the name is. Again, I'll try and include some details on that. So piggybacking on that was this new concept of having a hyperscale data center that's actually specific for AI. So actually purpose built for AI. I'm really intrigued to see what do they mean by purpose built, and what does that mean, sort of going back all the way back to the cables and racks and the building itself and how you cool it and things like that. So that would be really interesting to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could wax quite lyrical on that one because I've been looking at it.
Let's save it for an episode for next year.
So I shall keep quiet for now. But I think, and that's a real opportunity for new players to come in and challenge the hyperscalers.
Yeah, and I think I mean you're into that space, so I'm expecting good stuff from you for next year on that subject. The other one I saw recently was has kind of picked up momentum is vector databases. So that's really good that that's actually being kind of perceived and recognized as another type of database specific for sort of AI workloads and inference and things like that, and creating tokens and so on. So that's really, I think, great. And then just not to be kind of negative on the likes of Red Hat and so on. I was at the Red Hat. Oh God, I'm going to forget the name of the event now. It was I can't remember the name. I forget it. I'm not even going to bother trying to remember the name. Red Hat had a tech event in London. I think earlier this month or late last month. I can't remember. And they demonstrated Ansible Lightspeed. So Lightspeed is a Gen AI based code generation sort of version of Ansible. And it was great to see that the guy who was demonstrating it, he went into an Ansible script and then he typed kind of as a prompt or as a remark within the script, within the code, he typed what he wanted. And the Lightspeed part of Ansible generated the code for him. So he said, I want an instance in AWS that's, this t-shirt size, this much RAM, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he specified what he wanted, and it generated the Ansible code, script code for him automatically under that remark. And then he moved on to say something else about a Kubernetes cluster, and it generated the Kubernetes, the script for the Kubernetes. And then he actually executed that code, and it ran without any bugs or any stops, and generated that environment for him in AWS or Azure, whatever it was, in that public cloud, which I thought was quite impressive. So that as a tech sort of innovation or update, I thought that was really good. I thought that would kind of save you tons on scripting stuff, and at least the menial stuff initially, anyway, to begin with, and hopefully it kind of learns from your style and what you want and the kind of things that you normally do, and maybe kind of offer more help in the future. But Ansible Lightspeed, I thought that was quite good. I think HashiCorp are doing something similar rather to that as well. I think this is in pre-production or in beta or something, beta tested at the moment. But that kind of thing, I think, will help you to build your cloud infrastructure a lot more easily and quickly. We've had a lot of, we've looked at, I think, in the past and discussed tools that are sort of, reverse engineer your cloud environment. So there is actually a company that will, if you've built a cloud environment, they'll go and sniff the cloud environment and actually reverse engineer a Terraform script for you based on what they can see in your cloud environment, for example. So there is those tools out there that can actually do that. But, creating it and making it your own and making it specific to what you want by simply having a description, having a kind of a sort of a declarative way is I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that'll be a big improvement, a big game changer over the course of the next couple of years. Really,
yeah, and to see that demonstrated. So he literally wrote a couple of the remarks, it generated the code, and then he executed the script, and it went off and generated that environment, automatically for him. And that was really good. And I think it also, if I recall correctly, and people can correct me on this, but it also actually told you where it got the code from. So it actually said, I had to go to, GitHub to get this code, it's in this project, it's in this GitHub repository, blah, blah, blah. Or I had to go to, this other source somewhere else to get, and it actually told you what, so just kind of in case of copyright and infringement and things like that, it actually was kind of giving you the sources as well, which I thought was quite cool. Right. Anything else for you in terms of tech updates? Do you pick up on anything else?
No, the only other one which I came across very recently, and it's much more around edge computing, was a company called Nebulon, which was really a storage.
I've heard of them, but I don't know anything about them.
They basically, what they've got is they've offloaded all the. In fact, while they were a storage company, they offloaded the network first, and then the storage literally into a card that goes inside, and it's a very small card that goes inside local servers. If you think, we're going to have equipment out there, but it really starts to address the issues of how do you manage that. So it's got remote management capability, but it offloads to storage, so you can have storage. It literally makes managing the server environment or the hardware environment out at the edge much easier. And this is a physical device that slots into I'm going to say, I can't think what the technical term is, but basically slots into a small footprint server.
Right.
Really does two things: takes all the sort of network management and the storage management and offloads it from the processor, so you don't have to put more and more. So more of the processing power can go to things like using AI. It offloads that, but it also creates a secure, almost like panic room for the data.
Okay.
Really clever little device. This is a neat combination of software definition and a physical hardware device being married together to manage the problem of both networking, data, and security in an edge environment. And so, we'll maybe go a bit further. I need to dig a bit deeper, but everything I've seen so far says Nebulon could be something interesting in the edge world, if not
in the edge. Yeah, that sounds really interesting as a tech update. It'll be, maybe we can visit that next year and kind of see how that progresses.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I think we're there. We've been talking for some time, and I think we've kind of covered quite a lot of ground in this episode. So again, Paul, thank you very much for your time and all your insights. Appreciate it as always. I think I'm always learning something new. You always mention stuff like a Nebulon or whatever, and I go, oh, that's a new one. I didn't know about that. So that's something we can go and investigate.
And likewise, and it's great because I know you're at the other end of the spectrum in terms of cloud native versus my old mainframe background past, and I think that coming together is so useful at times. It's been fascinating for me too. Keeps this old brain active, that's for sure.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to be of service. So always thank you. Always happy for that. Okay, so so thank you, Paul. Again, appreciate your time. As many of the links as I can will be in the description of the video. I will try and include as many of the topics that we've discussed. I would really appreciate it if you guys can support me by subscribing to the channel. It's really important. I'm kind of almost there to 500 subscribers, which is quite cool. And I like this sort of the small community a lot. I get sort of messages from people about the episodes and things like that, which is quite good. If you have any suggestions for next year, please drop them either in the comments section of the video or drop me an email. I think my email address is on the YouTube channel page, so please do that. May I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope 2024 is going to be a fantastic year for you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching this long video. I really appreciate it. And you're still watching it, which is fantastic. Please feel free to check out some of the previous episodes of Class Data Play, as well as maybe checking out some of the other talks on the channel as well. Bye for now.